Hey everybody, it's Rafi at Zurb, and I got another great foundation video for you. This one is on visibility classes. So there are classes built into Foundation that you can add right into your HTML that will allow you to control what components or elements are shown on a page. And this is all based on screen size. So you can choose to hide things on a small screen, choose to show things on a medium screen. You can also do this based on orientation, so landscape or portrait. So there are show classes and there's also hide classes. So let's take a look at the show classes. You can choose to hide something on a small screen only. So you would use the show for small only class to only allow that element to be visible on a small screen. If you used a show for medium class, that would actually show the element for medium and larger screens. The reason for that is that Foundation is mobile first. So because it's mobile first, when you show something on medium, it also will apply to large unless you override that. And there's also a class to show on a medium screen only, so show for medium only. And then it goes so on and so forth up all the available breakpoints. And of course you can use hide classes as well. So hide for small only, hide for medium only, hide for large, and so on. The only thing that we would recommend is probably that you keep those classes consistent. So if you're mainly using hide classes, that would be easier to decipher what you're doing on a page if you're using a bunch of visibility classes than mixing and matching show and hide. There's also a few other classes that are built into Foundation that are visibility classes that you can use. So one of them is the hide class. You might use that to hide an element when the page loads and then use that or toggle that class on and off based on, clicking a button or something like that. So if you just want to hide something when the page loads, adding the hide class will take care of that. That'll do display none. The invisible class will hide the element visually, but the element will still take up space. And so that will create basically visibility hidden on the element. So you can use the invisible class. Sometimes we use that for form labels because if you have some forms that have labels and some inputs that don't, they'll actually not be vertically aligned because if the label is above the form. So that might be a use case for that. And then show for SR, that's show for screen reader. That will allow a screen reader to read an element or access an element, but hide it visually from a person that is not seeing impaired. So if somebody's visually impaired, this might be a good way to add some context to an element, but then not show it to people that can see the page. And there's also orientation classes, so show for landscape, show for portrait. So based on the browser reporting its orientation, you can use these classes. This would be good for an iPad. Maybe on portrait you want a more tall, narrower image and then swap it out on landscape for maybe something that's a little bit wider and shorter. So let's take a look at a couple examples of how to use this in the real world. Okay, so what we have here is a desktop type menu and a mobile type menu. So the mobile type menu is here with the hamburger icon, and then we have a desktop type menu. So this might be a good use case for visibility classes. So we can actually hide the title bar for a medium and larger screen. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll use the hide classes, hide for medium. Okay, so what that does is it hides the title bar for medium and larger screens. And we get back to a small screen and we'll see that the title bar shows up again. So that's good. Now we got to take care of this desktop type menu on the smaller screen. So if we're going to stay consistent and use the hide classes, we'll do this hide for small only. There you go. So now switching between breakpoints, you can see that we're showing and hiding elements based on a media query just using the classes in Foundation. That's really handy. Let's hop over to another example here. We're going to take a look at this particular layout. We have some bikes here that we're trying to sell. There's 9 of them in this block grid. Now 9 is an odd number, so when we scale down to a small screen, we have decided that only 2 items can fit on each line using the block grid. So that means we have this last 9th item here hanging off by itself, kind of a widow. Now one way we could do this, we might want to just center it, but it still doesn't look just right. We want this to be very even. So what we're going to do is we're going to hide it on a small screen. Maybe we have another landing page that has all the bikes that we want to send somebody to anyways. So we'll find the last item. We'll find the wrapper that wraps it. Because it's a block grid, it doesn't care how many columns are inside of it, so we can just apply this to the last column. We can do hide for small only. Or we could have done show for medium as well. Either way it works. So you could see that on a large screen we still have 9. When we get down to mobile, you can see now we have that nice even layout with 8 items. So this is another use case for visibility classes, and you're going to definitely find them handy in many, many cases.